Welcome back to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast here on CBS Sports Network. Auburn Tigers got 60 of a possible 62 first-place votes in Monday's Associated Press AP poll. That means they are ranked number one, but their best player, and one of the best players in the country, Johni Broome, is hurt. It's a significant ankle sprain suffered over the weekend. No surgery required, but he's going to at least miss 2 games, and most people seem to think even more to that. The Tigers will be back on the court tonight hosting Mississippi State, so it's a top 15 matchup. Auburn is favored, but not nearly by as much as they would be if Johni Broome was injured. Norlander, are the Tigers going to be number one in the AP poll this time next week? Can they survive a week? Mississippi State at home, and then this weekend at Georgia.
I think they can. Good question, GP, because I think it's very possible Auburn could get past Mississippi State here on Tuesday night. That's a really fun matchup. Really, I mean, so many of these matchups in the SEC are must-see, and that's yet another one. We just get these practically every night the SEC is in play. You're going to have must-see matchups. And then at Georgia, which, go ahead and check Georgia's schedule. It's ridiculous for the next 5 games. Georgia popped into the AP rankings this week for the first time since 2011, and Mike White's program, though I'm not opposed to being wrong here. It seems like they might be a quick pop in, pop out because they've got a lot on their schedule, including Auburn this weekend. You know what? Broome's been tremendous, and he's the centerpiece. He's been the best or second best player in the sport so far this season. GP, I say Auburn gets it done. I say they handle business at home against Mississippi State, and then they go on the road and they're able to beat Georgia on Saturday. I'll say they get that done. I talked with the source on Sunday, and they told me he'll be out at least 2 games. There is no rush for him coming back. So Tennessee next Saturday, January 25th, we'll see if he's available to play in that game. I mean, that's a just dynamite matchup, but you're not going to bring him back if he's not, if not 100%, very, very close to it. So we wait and see on Broome, which is a bummer. Any injury at all is a bummer, but for Auburn, for the SEC, for college basketball, for one of the more high-profile players in the sport, to lose him here is no good. He's averaging 17.9 points, 10.7 rebounds, 3.3 assists, and 2.7 blocks. And as we've mentioned earlier in the season, those numbers would actually be even better if he did not have to leave 2 games due to injury. He had a shoulder scare against Georgia State in mid-December, didn't wind up missing the next game at all, but the averages get dipped down there, so his numbers would be even better had he not suffered injuries. I'll say they get it done. Auburn's been that good, but it won't be easy. I'd be surprised. I'll say this, GP. I'd be surprised if they go 0-2. Home against Mississippi State, at Georgia, both very tough games, both losable games, but with how the Tigers have comported themselves this season, I don't think they're going 0-2 in the next 2 minimally without Broome.
I know you said a source told you they're not going to rush him back. I wish a source would tell you the opposite of that. Wouldn't that be fun to report?
That would be.
The Auburn program said they're going to rush him back.
I want a source to go on the record about that. I want a source to go on the record about, listen, I can't really call this successful surgery right now. I'm not convinced. Let's wait and see on this. Every single surgery is always successful. So I completely agree with you on that. We're not going to rush him back. Although sometimes we do see teams and players do wind up rushing players back, but we don't get that admission in the days following an injury. So sometime in the future, I'll try and correct that and make it a first in the history of sports reporting.
I wish you could go on CBS Sports HQ and say, I talked to a source from Auburn. They said as soon as he's on one crutch, Johni Broome will be back on the court, hobbled or otherwise. They're rushing him back.
We're gonna bring him out. We're gonna protest the NCAA rules, and if he can be out there with one of those scooters, we're gonna have Johni Broome out there with a scooter. We're gonna make that happen.
Johni Broome on a scooter against Alabama. That's the game of the weekend. We're rushing him back. No, obviously they're not going to rush him back. And if they don't rush him back, or even if they just bring him back when he's ready to play, I'm not a doctor. Sometimes I pretend to be one. I'm not. But I am somebody who covers basketball, and I am somebody who, lives in a place where the NBA franchise has had more games missed by players for injury this season than any team in the NBA. And it was also true last season. So I know a thing or two about sprained ankles. And I'm just telling you, if this were in the NBA, if this happened in the NBA, they would come out the next day and say he's out a month minimum. They would just say he's out. If that happens to you in the NBA, you're not playing for a long time, with few exceptions. So I hope it's only 2 games. I hope it's only a week. Again, I'm not a doctor. Everybody's body responds differently. All of the disclaimers, right? I'd be surprised if he only misses 2 games. Will you be surprised if he only misses 2 games?
I think it's more likely than not he misses at least 3 games. By the way, from what you're laying out with the Grizzlies here, maybe you do need to be the doctor. If this is continually being an issue, they might need to look into to making a staff change there. If they keep having these year-over-year injury issues, sounds like it's been something.
Not going to go on national television and criticize my training staff, Norlander.
Okay.
But I get your point. I hear what you're saying. I understand. Hey, you would fit right in with some Grizzlies fans.
Okay.
You should jump on a Grizzlies message board. You'll fit right in. How big of a difference this makes? For what it's worth, KenPom had Auburn as a 13-point favorite tonight against Mississippi State at home. The actual line in the betting market is down to 7.5. So that's a difference of 5.5 points. So that's how much Johni Broome matters to Las Vegas. It's a 5.5 point difference to them. I've seen other numbers, that vary slightly, but 5.5 is what Vegas said relative to the KenPom number. That's one way to look at it. The other way is, even without their best player, Auburn is a 7.5 point favorite over a top 15 team tonight. That suggests that maybe Matt Painter was closer to right than wrong earlier this season, the Purdue coach, when he said Auburn is so talented, so deep, that you could take their bench and make a top 25 team. We sort of wondered and laughed whether that was really true. These point spreads suggest that it might be true, because they just lost a National Player of the Year candidate, their best player, leading scorer, and rebounder, and they're still a sizable favorite over a top 15 team. That's pretty impressive. Yeah.
Good recall on and callback to Painter's quote there, because that'll get tested to a certain extent with no Broome. Mississippi State, a reputation for being a stout defensive team. It's merely just been good so far this season, and now it's got a big challenge having to play in Neville Arena and going up against an Auburn team that will be charged up. And even like Dylan Cardwell, who's the second big on Auburn, and has become really good friends with Johni Broome. We detailed that on CBSSports.com earlier this season and talked about it on the show back in November, when Cardwell was really forthcoming and honest about how initially he did not even accept Broome as a teammate because he thought that Broome was, going to take some of his minutes. And lo and behold, Broome did, who, after he transferred from Morehead State, where he was a mid-major stud, and they went through a lot of growth together, and they've become really, really close friends. It's a really awesome story. Well, now Cardwell, who's been a big factor on this team anyway, has a chance to really be a guy to step up and be an even bigger force there. It won't just be him, obviously, but he's going to be a key factor there. If you're curious on who becomes the next guy up, Chaney Johnson, I was told, is going to be the guy that will move into the 5th starting spot, which makes sense. He got the most minutes of any non-starter to this point in the season, and it's a good matchup. Mississippi State coming off of what was quite a thriller at home, a 95-90 loss over the weekend to Kentucky, where Kentucky hit 16 out of 32 three-point attempts. Kentucky's a really good offensive team, but in most games, if it shoots at least 33s, it's not making 50% of them. So it got hot especially in a road environment there. So interested to see how Jan's team responds. Players to know in this game: Josh Hubbard, a fun little 5'11", who's really, again, the dude ain't 5'11". Who cares what he's listed at? He's a dynamo. He's diminutive, and he's a lot of fun. He's a good 3-point shooter. Between him and Cameron Matthews, those two guards, how successful they are against Auburn, I think will be key. And yeah, I just want to see how the Tigers respond without their leader, their most important player in the tune-up for at least 2 games, if not 3 or more, without Johni Broome.
Just to reiterate, Auburn got Mississippi State at home tonight. Then it's at Georgia this weekend. If Johni Broome only misses 2 games, it might be a byproduct of the fact that it's beneficial. Next week is the week that Auburn doesn't have a midweek game. So it's Mississippi State tonight, at Georgia on Saturday, and then no more games until the following Saturday, January 25th, against Tennessee. So that's at least one less game that Auburn would otherwise have to play. Perhaps that's one less game that Johni Broome will have to miss.